Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Redefining Windows 10 for the Mobile First, Cloud First Era webinar. I'm Jason Rozak. I'll be leading the conversation today. So let's talk about Windows 10. So why is Windows 10 important? Well, if we look at Windows 10, Microsoft expects Windows 10 to reach 1 billion users by the year 2018. So as you're well aware, this is going to have a huge impact on your enterprises. When we really look at Windows 10 from a very high level, we see Windows 10 as a completely new operating system. This really is an embrace of unified endpoint management from Microsoft and represents really the first truly mobile operating system for PCs and tablets alike. If you look at some of the high-level key features in Windows 10, the operating system has been combined to be a single platform that runs on both phone and desktop. There's some other key things you'll see with applications where developers can now run one binary across all device types. And I think most importantly is the distribution for models and for Windows in general has shifted. With Windows 10, you'll hear about Windows Update for Business and Windows Update as a Service. Some key new features that really redefine how Windows has been delivered in the past. If we look at mobile devices today and how iOS and Android installs operating system updates, the model is very similar to what you'll see in Windows 10. With Windows 10, this should be the last operating system you ever buy. And that becomes very interesting because now when you've taken the option of buying a new CD out of the picture, kind of how you did with Windows 7 and Windows XP, the management model really shifts with it. So Windows 10 is really defined for the mobile first, cloud first era. We see Windows 10 as a device that's going to be both your personal device as well as your enterprise device. So with that device being dual persona, there's going to be some different management capabilities you're going to want to leverage in Windows 10. So jumping into management, if we look at how a Windows 7 device was managed in the past, it was very complex and cumbersome. And the typical process would involve an IT administrator imaging a device, joining it to a domain, securing all the software through the image, using a third-party antivirus product to ensure antivirus and malware updates are installed, as well as using third-party systems to distribute applications. This was very difficult for administrators to keep track of. They've got 10 different tools to do 10 different jobs. And I think more importantly, there's a lot of use cases that really weren't supported in this management model. So you think of BYOD type scenarios, you really couldn't support that because you didn't want to join those personal owned devices to your domain. CYOD was also very difficult to achieve. Again, one of the key challenges was how does an administrator get this device up and running for those end users? Well, when we think about Windows 10, there's been a major shift in the management paradigm. So if you look at some of the group policies that were typically used to manage Windows devices in the past, a lot of those group policies have been ported over to MDM in Windows 10, which really is going to allow you much more flexible management options. So again, one of the key use cases I like to point out when we start thinking about different management paradigms is the traveling executive or the traveling salesperson. If you looked at the management model prior to the release of Windows 10, it was very difficult to control those devices. GPO policies would have to be applied, device would have to be on the corporate network, rebooted. If devices weren't static on that network, it was quite difficult to manage the device. Well, with Windows 10, we really support a fluent management capability over the air. The management has shifted to a cloud-based management solution that can enable you advanced security and data loss protection functionalities, as well as a cohesive application management experience. So from a very high level, I think you'll see a lot of this presentation geared towards the cloud-based management. It is important to point out that Windows 10 will be supported by AirWatch for both traditional domain joined devices as well as Azure Active Directory domain devices. So we can really support managing devices regardless of which domain type they're joined to, as well as devices that are not joined to the domain. So jumping in, this will be a very high-level conversation about what's coming in the next couple of months. So what we've done is we've really been partnered with Microsoft for about a year and a half now to help co-develop features as the operating system was progressing. we've really focused on 4 key areas of management. We want to help administrators streamline deployment. Again, you think of those scenarios where your end users may want to be able to onboard devices themselves. You think of the difficulties administrators may have experienced with imaging. We want to help with that problem. The second pillar to our management is going to be unified application experience. So we want to focus in Windows 10 on creating an application experience that will support you with all of your application types. So your end users are going to need to run Win32 applications, universal apps, web apps, SaaS apps, remote apps. We really want to try to provide one experience to manage all application types from a central management pane. The next is advanced security and data loss prevention. So I think we've all seen on the news the different security breaches with passwords getting stolen, with companies really living behind their firewall and finding that that is open to vulnerabilities in itself. So there's a lot of new security policies that we're going to implement to actually help secure the endpoint itself and provide that conditional access based off of that device health. And finally, Windows Update. So I think when you look at Windows 7 management again, everybody's familiar with Patch Tuesday. So Patch Tuesday, administrators would approve all of these applications. They would go through a vetting process to ensure that they're going to maintain app compatibility and not break anything. The process, again, was very cumbersome. So one of the things we focused on in Windows 10 is how can we reimagine that process and help administrators build a solution that doesn't require that much maintenance overhead. The first piece we'd like to talk about is streamlined deployment. So prior to Windows 10, there was really only a couple of ways to enroll into MDM. Primarily go to settings, go to your network config, add a work account, and enroll through Workplace. We've got some great new streamlined deployment methods for Windows 10 that are really going to help solve some of the end user enrollment problems that we saw with Windows 8.1. So we really look at these as 2 separate categories. There's the cloud domain join scenario, and there's the non-cloud domain join scenario. So we fully integrate with Azure Active Directory to provide simplified enrollment and onboarding of these devices. So again, let's think of a BYOD type scenario. With the out-of-box experience, an end user can go to Best Buy, purchase a new device, open that device, and at first launch, that end user can put in his company's email address and password, have that device be fully joined to the cloud domain, as well as enrolled into management by AirWatch. So what we've allowed end users to do, again, is seamlessly integrate with AAD to create one experience where I can now put in my email address and password one time and fully manage that device as well as join it to my cloud domain. The second piece of cloud domain join is really a simplified BYOD type flow. So as end users, we found that many end users are confused with downloading an agent or going to a settings menu on the device. So one of the things we're looking to support in Windows 10 is enrollment through applications. So really, when you think about what this feature can enable you to do now, you can take traditional Office apps like Office 365 and have your end users sign into Office 365 and have that authentication fully enroll them into management by AirWatch, as well as have that process join the device to your cloud domain. So it's really innovative in Windows 10 to really rethink how these devices are onboarded. I think this is going to be one of the most exciting features. Now think of scenarios where your employees simply want to get access to Outlook. So now they can sign into their email app, and by the act of signing into that email app, they're fully enrolled and fully managed by MDM. So exciting stuff there. The next piece is really how do we help administrators bulk provision devices for devices that aren't joined to the cloud domain. So with new bulk provisioning options in Windows 10, we enable administrators to really rethink imaging. If you really looked at imaging before, again, it was very useful when you were buying a new CD, upgrading out of the box, ensuring driver compatibility. Well, with Windows 10, you really shouldn't have to worry about most of those problems. So what we're going to be able to do with bulk provisioning is allow administrators to create packages to add applications or remove applications, create local accounts on those devices, as well as fully enroll that device into management. So some of the scenarios that we'll be looking to support will be really allowing your end users to enroll by emailing them a link to this package or emailing them this package themselves, having that end user simply double-click that package and fully provision that device. Another key use case we see this to be very applicable for is for administrators who want to bulk provision devices on behalf of users. So with this process, your administrators can now take a thumb drive, install this package on a device through a thumb drive, and use this process to remove those apps and configure that device to be in compliance with your corporate policies. So again, it really allows you to take an OEM standard image, remove that bloatware, add the software that you require, as well as configure those security policies to get that device up to speed without the need for imaging. And one of the other great additions about this, again, is that it's fully offline. So this process, if these devices aren't joined to the internet, you can use this process to join the device to Wi-Fi. You can use it to do lots of different things. And probably most importantly, you can use this process to distribute Windows licenses. So one of the key problems that's addressed with this is prior to the release of Windows 10 with Windows 7, you would have to have an image to control that Windows operating system license. So with this new provisioning mechanism, we can actually deploy those Windows license keys as part of the onboarding process as well. So it's a complete reimagination of how you can get your desktop and tablet devices up and running quickly. And it really allows you the ability to support those flexible BYOD and CYOD type initiatives. Moving on from onboarding, our next key pillar was creating a unified app experience. So we really look at 4 different sections for how we can help unify this experience. So prior to the release of Windows 10, most administrators would have a couple of different solutions to help distribute applications. You would use an SCCM, for example, to distribute MSIs or EXEs or any of those legacy applications. You may use an MDN solution to distribute your new modern solution or your new modern applications. And then you would have kind of a third process for how you handled your SaaS apps. Well, with the introduction of Windows 10, we've really looked to consolidate all of those different experiences into a single unified catalog. One of the innovations, not innovations, but one of the new features in Windows 10 is also a new unified Microsoft Store. So this is very important to developers as well as administrators. So with one Microsoft Store, as a developer, I can now create one binary to run on all Windows devices. So again, when you start thinking about Windows Phone and some of the challenges of an app ecosystem problem, we really see that as being resolved with the introduction of this new Microsoft Store. AirWatch, again, will fully integrate with the Microsoft Store. So if you want to do any kind of application deployment through the store, we can either support pushing those applications through the AirWatch app catalog, or we can support using the Microsoft Store in general. You'll also see policies for more advanced, I'd say more secure lockdown type scenarios for federal customers in particular, where we can block access to the store and use solely our AirWatch app catalog distribute applications. Another key feature of the Microsoft Store is a new extension to the store called the Business Store Portal. So many of you may be familiar with Apple's volume purchasing program. This is a very similar concept for Windows. So what the Business Store Portal allows you to do is really bulk purchase applications as well as provision those apps and reclaim and reuse licensing. One of the really neat things that we've done to integrate with the Business Store Portal is support offline licensing. So offline licensing is a very unique scenario where we can actually deliver those applications regardless of account type on the device. So one of the key use cases I think about is I talk to some of our education partners, and I hear that education, for example, is very difficult for Apple devices to deploy apps without an Apple ID. So if you look at Windows 10, what we can do is we can now go to those education partners and say, hey, listen, we realize it's very difficult for you to put a unique ID on each one of these students' devices. Well, with Windows 10, we can help you provision all of those applications regardless of what kind of account is on the device. So you think, again, you don't have the requirement for a Microsoft account or an Azure Active Directory account on the device. if you have those scenarios where, say, a third grader can't do that, we can fully provision and manage all those licenses as well. Some additional things that offline licensing allows us to do, again, if you think of scenarios where maybe you've got the access to the Microsoft Store blocked, we can fully integrate with the Business Store portal and continue to distribute those line of business applications through our application catalog. So again, this really is going to help solve the problem of a central point of licensing and being able to flexibly deliver those application licenses to devices. More about the catalog. So again, I think it's very important to note that end users today really aren't concerned with which application type their administrators are distributing. From an end user perspective, I should be able to go to a central catalog and download a Business Store app, a Microsoft Store app, a line of business app, a Win32 app, a Universal app, or a SaaS app. One of the key things we've really focused on is helping solve that fragmentation problem and create one central catalog that has all application types. So with AirWatch support in Windows 10, we can fully provision and fully install all of your MSIs as well as all of your universal applications. Another key piece to this new catalog is going to be the addition of web applications. With web apps, again, you can provide an icon that's friendly to your end users and treat a web app as any other application and publish it to your catalog. Additionally, when we think about application compatibility, one of the new things you'll see come out this year is the addition of remote apps to our catalog. So again, the focus is to create one catalog where all of your end users can really get access to all those application types from a central source. And again, this is great when we think about taking alleviation off the help desk as well, right? So now we can enable end users to self-service all of those applications as well. So from an admin experience, we heard a lot of feedback with our Windows 8.1 release that it could be difficult to push out MSIs or EXEs. So one important key thing to note here is that with your MSIs and those legacy desktop apps, you can treat those like any other application in AirWatch. It's as simple as I take my MSI, I upload it into AirWatch, and I can fully distribute it to all of my smart groups and all of my devices just like any other application. For more complex workflows, we also have a fully automated task automation suite. With this, we can create complex packages to really do those automated workflows for those more in-depth management scenarios. So you think of scenarios where you would, say, run a PowerShell command or create a new folder to install an EXE or any of those run batch files, any kind of advanced scripting we can support with our task automation engine. So the great thing about the task automation suite is it also incorporates a wizard-driven UI. So as an administrator, it can be quite difficult to create all these PowerShell commands and really figure out how I can use these batch files and push out these custom scriptings. So we've created an automated workflow that's very simple and intuitive for administrators to do all of these different actions. One of the key things to note as well is for those legacy packages, we realize that those package installs may be large packages. So we fully support as well having a concept of a relay server throughout our network. So what relay servers allow us to do is create local distribution points to push all of these applications to. So as you start moving more and more bits, you're going to see that the relay server context, again, integrates seamlessly with our smart groups and our multi-tenant architecture to help you distribute those applications throughout your organization. One of the other neat things you can do with the Task Automation Suite is really decide how you want those packages installed. So if you want to create a rule that says only install the package at 2 a.m. when the device is connected for Wi-Fi, for example, you can fully create that package to do that action, but do it on a scheduled condition based off of Wi-Fi or encryption status or time of day. So it's really flexible and pretty powerful to allow you to create the most complex automated workflows. Application security. So when we think about applications, one of the trickiest things with Windows is how do you prevent unwanted applications from running on the device? So with new application security features in Windows 10, we offer you the ability to flexibly create rules to block all application types on the device. So again, this isn't limited to just store applications. This is MSIs, EXEs, DLLs, and even scripts. We can fully support creating whitelist and blacklist for all these different application types. The nice thing about this as well is it's very flexible. So you can actually create these policies by specifying an application file path or by specifying an application publisher. So maybe you have an untrusted publisher, you can just block that publisher altogether. Very flexible. So we also see a lot of scenarios where administrators want to lock down devices to only allow maybe program files applications to run. Again, we can fully support that as well. We also support device guard. So again, when we think about application security for Windows 10, the model has really shifted. So if you look before, enterprises really leveraged antivirus solutions and anti-malware solutions to prevent untrusted apps from running. That process was very difficult because typically the anti-malware solutions caught this new signing days after it was actually deployed. So when you think about Windows 10 and how you can really reimagine how to manage these devices, one thing that you can think about is managing it like you would your mobile devices. So if you look at an iOS device or an Android device, those applications are sandboxed. So you don't have to worry about the threat of malware. So when you think about a sandboxed application, those applications are going to be coming from a trusted source. So when you look at Windows 10 and Device Guard, one of the things you can really do is support a deployment scenario where that device will only run trusted applications. So those applications can be trusted a handful of different ways. But the idea is that these applications can only run if they're trusted. And again, this is very secure. So you think of scenarios where the OS kernel gets compromised. With Device Guard, only those applications that are trusted can run even with that kernel compromise. So it's very flexible. And again, as we think of Windows 10 as being a more mobile solution, all of our different solutions are going to think about how can we enable a trusted app experience. So with Device Guard, as well as our application security process, you can really support scenarios where only those trusted signed applications are going to run. And it's very flexible. If you look at what Microsoft has done, you can take a Win32 app or any of your legacy desktop apps and really have them signed by Microsoft to be trusted in a matter of days. So it's really, again, forcing the device to only run trusted applications. In addition to the unified application experience, we're also introducing several new advanced security and data loss prevention features. I think when you really look at Windows 10 in general, the enterprise data protection features and the new advanced security features are going to stand out above all. So one new feature being introduced is enterprise data protection. So with enterprise data protection, AirWatch allows you to configure a policy to determine which data on your devices should be personal information and which data should be enterprise information. So again, as we approach Windows 10 and see that these are going to be dual-use devices with both personal and work accounts, it's going to become increasingly important to make sure that your work data is secure from your personal apps. So from a very high level, the way we do this is by first determining what data is actually enterprise data. So we allow you to configure a policy in AirWatch to decide what your enterprise boundary is. So when we say enterprise boundary, essentially you create a policy that says this SharePoint or this email domain or this URL is always going to be a source of company information. So I want to protect that information on the device. So we let you create a policy to determine the source of enterprise data. Once that data is determined as enterprise, we allow you to configure different policy levels on that device. So you can create policies to say only my work applications can access this data, as well as determine which applications are actually work applications. So again, I think this is an incredibly innovative feature in Windows 10 that really is a game changer. But essentially, you can configure in AirWatch which applications actually have permissions to that company data. So again, maybe you have a box or some kind of file repository sync application that's personal and you don't want getting access to this data. We can actually allow you to determine which apps are going to have permissions to handle that data. The other key thing is really how secure that data is. So this data is encrypted both at rest as well as in transit. So as an end user now, if I try to take this enterprise protected piece of data, put it on a thumb drive and move it to another device, that data is still going to be protected. So I can't take that data and simply move it to another device to get around the security requirement. Again, when we think about securing the data and the different levels of security available, it's also important to recognize that accidental data leakage is a major problem for end users. So think of someone who accidentally shares data with a non-work app or accidentally posts something to Twitter. There's some great new features that allow you to kind of help prevent that accidental data leakage. So one great use case I like to cite is the marketing professional. So maybe you've got some internal documents about your company that you want your marketing professionals to be able to post to Twitter, but you don't want anybody else to be able to post it outside of the company. So we can allow you to create a flexible policy that says that marketing professional should be able to copy and paste information as well as share data, but they should be warned if they do that and they share that data outside of a company app. So in this use case, your marketing professional now is going to go share that data with, say, a Twitter, and the operating system is going to warn them, hey, you're about to share company data with a personal app. Are you sure you want to proceed? Well, when the marketing professional accepts the warning, AirWatch is actually going to capture an audit event of that acceptance and report that to your administrators. So now if you do have a data leakage, you can go back and check and see, hey, this marketing professional shared this with Twitter. They weren't supposed to. What happened? Or if it is a document that was supposed to be shared, you've implemented a solution that was flexible enough to allow that marketing professional to be able to share that document. So again, I think the enterprise data protection scenario is one of the great new innovations for Microsoft and Windows 10, and it's something that you'll be seeing a couple of deep dive sessions come out in the coming months. So look forward to talking more about enterprise data protection. One of the other key features to protecting your data is controlling which applications have access to your VPN. So with Windows 10, we will support an AirWatch tunnel application, which will allow you to fully tunnel all of your traffic from all of your mobile devices as well as desktop devices. Windows 10 features a per app level VPN connection that is configurable in AirWatch by the administrator. So one of the great new things with this per app VPN tunnel that's really, again, a differentiator for the platform is that applications can be defined not only to have permissions to the VPN tunnel, but also we can set a policy to determine what that application can reach once it's inside your corporate network. So again, I like to take the HR professional an example. So if you have an HR-specific application, that HR-specific application shouldn't be granted access to your financial SharePoint, for example, or your financial server's IP address. So we can actually create per-app policies to specify that that financial application does have permissions to your VPN tunnel, but once it's in the tunnel, it only has permissions to reach a certain subset of IP addresses. So again, we've taken a per app tunnel and we've kind of limited it further to determining which applications actually have access to which resources on your internal network. For even greater security environments, we also integrate with our VMware NSX solution. So NSX allows you to granularly microsegment your data center on the back end. So think of this security policy now where you can say this application can access these 5 IP addresses, and then you can leverage NSX to do microsegmentation to block off those 5 IP addresses from the rest of your network. So it really allows administrators a flexible way to determine what applications have access to what resources and ensure that their network is protected on the back end. Also of note, we will fully support all third-party VPN providers. So if you're using F5 or Cisco or Junos or any of those third-party, we can fully configure those VPN policies as well. So again, I think the per-app VPN, you're going to see lots coming out in the next couple of months about that. That's a very exciting subject, and again, we could spend a lot of time there, so we'll be having a couple of follow-up sessions for per-app VPN as well. In addition to advanced security with just enterprise data protection and per-app VPN, one of the things we focused on is how can we really support these devices in a cloud-first model and enable administrators to ensure the security of the device. So again, things like conditional access. How do I know that a device is going to be healthy before I grant it access to a SaaS application? Things like silently configuring encryption. All of those different policies are really going to reimagine how administrators can provide access to resources. So the first piece we'll talk about is health attestation. So what health attestation allows us to do is we can actually check the health integrity of a device. So with health attestation, we can check to see if secure boot was enabled. We can check for code integrity check to see if that was enabled, as well as things like is TPM 2.0 on the device enabled and BitLocker encryption. So where we think this is going to be very helpful, again, is let's think of the conditional access flow. So maybe you don't want to just open up VPN access to all of your devices. Or maybe you don't want to provide a sign-on to a SaaS application to all of your devices. Well, through integration with identity, what we can do is we can actually run a compliance check on that device to check the health of that device and determine whether or not it's going to meet your security requirements to get access to whichever application or VPN tunnel or permission that you'd like to grant access to. So health attestation, again, allows us to do this at a much deeper level than anything we've been able to do before. So additional security policies. Again, I think it's important to note that we recognize that customers are going to be in a transition period throughout the next couple of years as they migrate from Windows 7 to Windows 10 and they start thinking about how mobility can be leveraged to manage these devices. So we do have a Win32 client that lives on the device that allows us to do some much deeper management capabilities. So we can fully encrypt the device silently using BitLocker encryption for your end users. One of the great things about that is, again, when we think about security, your end users shouldn't require permissions to enable this. So our agent can fully do this encryption process for you in the background, as well as put a requirement for a PIN login to the encryption container. So again, you think of an end user now doesn't just sign into Windows, we can set a PIN policy for how they sign in using BitLocker. Additionally, as we think about how to help alleviate support desk tickets, we also capture the encryption key as part of the encryption process. So now if your end users lose their recovery key or they forget their login, for example, we store that recovery key in the AirWatch console as well as the self-service portal for those end users to get access. Some additional policies, we fully support configuration of the Windows firewall. We fully support antivirus configuration as well as monitoring. We can capture GPS data if privacy concerns are met, as well as have a fully integrated compliance engine. So again, this compliance engine can allow you to ensure that antivirus real-time updates are on, for example, can allow you to ensure that devices are encrypted. And based off the compliance status of that device, you can set your conditional access policies. So we do offer a solution out of the box with AirWatch with integration into our own identity product, VMware Identity Manager. So with VMware Identity Manager, again, we can really help you support those conditional access policies for all of your different platforms. But we also integrate fully with Azure Active Directory. So we see more and more customers migrating to Office 365, and creating conditional access to Office 365 has been a greater concern. So we fully integrate with Azure Active Directory to support device compliance reporting. So what this allows you to do is we can enable compliance scans within AirWatch for those different antivirus and health attestation and BitLocker encryption policies and report that compliance status directly to Azure Active Directory. Azure Active Directory can then revoke access to Office 365 or any other SaaS application in your Azure tenant based off of your conditional access policies. So again, it's a full integration with Azure Active Directory to allow you to create flexible solutions and set your security levels of confidence to allow these devices to access these SaaS resources. Again, further with Azure Active Directory integration, we fully support Windows Passport for Work as well as Windows Hello. So again, one of the biggest problems, and probably the biggest problem facing enterprises today and consumers alike, is how do you manage passwords? I've got 100 different logins for all my different websites and really don't have a central way of securing those passwords. So with integration with Passport for Work and Windows Hello, we allow you to set a policy in AirWatch to require multi-factor authentication to log into the operating system, as well as maybe require a biometric login. So this is very similar to a password policy that you would see in AirWatch today. We can actually set the PIN requirement as well as the biometric requirement for sign-in to Windows. And again, I think if you've seen the Microsoft documentation out there, this is a much more stringent, better solution to passwords. This really is meant to be a replacement for passwords, smart cards, and virtual smart cards in general, because the password never really leaves the device. But again, AirWatch will fully integrate with these different features and allow you to configure that policy within our console. We also support full device configuration. So for Wi-Fi, we support certificate-based authentication. If you're using WPA Personal, WPA Enterprise, we fully integrate with all your different Wi-Fi providers. For email, again, we fully integrate with Office 365. We can support all of your Exchange ActiveSync policies to configure native email on the device. We have a very advanced VPN policy, so you think of things like network triggering and per-app VPN and creating NRPT rules. We have a very robust feature set around VPN configuration. And of course, we support full certificate lifecycle management. So one of the things with Windows 8.1 and Windows Phone 8.1 was SCEP and Indes was required to do all client certificate management. Well, that changes with Windows 10, and we can fully integrate with ADCS and allow you to provision all of your different PFX requirements. Additionally, you'll see a new restrictions policy available in AirWatch. So again, this is very familiar with what you would know with other platforms, but we have lots of new security policies that allow us to do things like block access to the store or prevent Wi-Fi configuration. In all, we've introduced over 50 new restrictions. So again, a lot to cover today, but again, I encourage you to check the AirWatch console and check out the great new restrictions we've implemented. One key thing with restriction policies as well is a full configuration of the Microsoft Edge browser. So again, blocking pop-ups, allowing block-ups, sending all of your traffic to Internet or to Internet Explorer. We fully support configuration of the Edge browser on the device. The last piece we'll talk about is update management. So again, when we think about update management in the past, enterprises would integrate with WSUS. They would have a workflow where an administrator every Tuesday would check the latest patches. They would test compatibility and make sure that those patches didn't break any of their applications. It was just a very complex, cumbersome process. So with Windows 10, we'll allow you to support distribution rings throughout your enterprise. So the idea behind distribution rings are that you can actually enable your mission-critical devices to be upgraded with Windows patches after you've thoroughly vetted them throughout your organization system. So the way we envision this process working is really the first ring would be Microsoft testing of an update. After Microsoft tests the update, then the Windows Insiders would test the update. So now you've got 5 million Windows Insiders testing the Windows update. The next would be your non-mission critical devices throughout your enterprises. So now you can push those updates to that first ring of non-mission critical devices. After you've verified integrity with your applications through those different rings, again, you can sequence it to put your mission critical devices at the end of the chain. And it really allows you to rethink how your organization is actually deploying Windows updates. Again, it is important to note that if you're still using WSUS, or if you want that granular update management capability, we fully support that as well. So we can actually allow you to target a WSUS server as well as group to subscribe the device to that WSUS group. Additionally, we manage the client on the device. So you can set and install all updates automatically, or you can maybe say you don't want updates being installed automatically. You can create a policy where you can set the scheduled install date and time. Again, it's a full configuration of the Windows Update client on the device to ensure that the latest Windows updates are also always installed. We also support peer-to-peer delivery configuration. So again, if you have devices on that corporate network and you want to enable peer-to-peer delivery of Windows updates, we fully allow you to configure that as well. One other key thing to note is Windows 10, we will support line of business use cases. So if you want to lock devices into a single application or multiple applications, we can allow you to configure those kiosk mode type scenarios within the AirWatch console. Additionally, we have separations to support corporate and BYOD. And again, I think a key concern here is privacy. We've taken a lot of ability to control what policies are distributed to BYOD devices as compared to corporate. So if you have those corporate-owned devices, we can offer you that very granular management capability. But if you have BYOD devices in your deployment, we can also allow you to ensure that all of your privacy considerations are met. Additional resources. So we put out a lot of new updates for Windows 10. If you check our website under the Windows Solution page, you'll see our latest solution offering for Windows 10. We've created a white paper that's very great. So again, as enterprises adopt Office 365, I highly encourage you to check out this Office 365 white paper. It really speaks deeply to how to support Office 365 with AirWatch for all of your different platforms. We've also got some great new blogs up that take a deeper dive into enterprise data protection, as well as the unified application experience, as well as provide a high-level overview of how management has shifted with Windows 10 and EMM. Please feel free, again, if you could post all of your questions to the chat window. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Look forward to the next couple of months. Please enroll in our beta program today. Start testing your Windows 10 devices in one of the supported AirWatch console versions, and we look forward to speaking with you in the coming weeks. Thanks, everyone.